Hi everybody, I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks lunchtime streaming show, where we watch old 16mm films and try to figure out what we just saw. That was all over the place. We didn't have a title for it, and written on the can was Unknown Eastman Teaching Films. And Eastman Teaching Films was a company that was, I guess, a subsidiary of Kodak. I think that's right. And they basically did films for educational markets, and also were distributed to some theaters as shorts before features. Yeah, so that was kind of bing bang boom all over the place. This one is a little bit more focused and a little bit more contemporary, and it has sound. This is Keeping Your Teeth Healthy. Enjoy.
All your life, you need to take care of your teeth. Your dentist will help you. You can learn about chewing from your dentist. If you could see yourself with X-ray eyes, this is how it looks inside when you chew.
Chewing is so important. If you had no teeth, you wouldn't be able to digest. And you should always chew your food very well. It's very, very important.
Your dentist helps you take care of your teeth. Sometimes he uses a special light. He wants to look carefully at each tooth. Your front teeth are for cutting.
Here are the incisors. The incisors are for tearing food apart so that you can get it into your mouth in smaller pieces. Then there are cuspids, or canine teeth, and they're the pointed, sharp ones.
Way in the back are your biggest teeth, the molars. Your dentist can see them. And sometimes he uses a model to show them to you.
The molars are for grinding the food up into little tiny pieces so that they can go down and be digested in your tummy. And when they all work together, they go like this, and they grind back and forth and back and forth.
Your teeth are wonderfully shaped so that you can bite and chew. Everyone should go to the dentist twice a year to see that all goes well.
You kept them very clean for me. I'm very proud of you. Those are nice molars. You're getting your 6-year molars. Even though you're 7, sometimes they come in then. But they look super, and they're very healthy.
Many dentists help keep teeth healthy by treating them with fluoride.
Corey, this is fluoride, and it helps to make your teeth hard and resist tooth decay. And we put it on like this so that it'll soak into the teeth. The fluoride helps to prevent the acid from getting inside the teeth and making holes, which are cavities.
Another important reason to visit your dentist, your teeth are changing.
Wow, this is fantastic. Look at that, all those new teeth.
The dentist looks at your baby teeth. They get loose and are replaced by new permanent teeth.
Here's one that's loose, and here's another one that's loose. When you lose those baby teeth, the big teeth will come up underneath. So the baby teeth are very important for the big teeth. They keep the space for them, and they let you eat. And then here's one that's very, very loose. These are baby teeth that will be coming out.
This model shows permanent teeth above and below. how they push through the gums to replace the baby teeth. You should keep your permanent teeth for the rest of your life.
And here's one on the top. This is just coming in. They're gorgeous teeth, Dana.
All your life, you need good, strong teeth to chew your food. But food clings to teeth. That's why you brush your teeth. The dentist has something special. He has a solution which works like magic. When he puts this solution on your teeth, after a few minutes, it shows what you usually cannot see. Deposits of acid called plaque. Plaque comes from leftover particles of food.
Where's the plaque?
Where the blue dyes are. That's where the plaque on your teeth is. And when you brush, you're going to get rid of the plaque and get it all off your teeth in all those areas, well, especially around the gum lines. You've got to brush very carefully along all of the gum lines.
And then when you visit your dentist, special equipment and paste can make your teeth super clean. Eating fresh and nourishing foods helps you to have strong teeth and gums. And avoid too many sweet foods and soft drinks. Sugar makes acid in your mouth.
Here's a superfood. Take a good chomp out of it. Good one. That'll keep your teeth so clean, it's a natural tooth cleaner. It won't hurt any of your teeth, and it'll make them all shiny and keep them bright.
Your teeth are made for you to chew good food so that you can swallow easily, digest, and stay healthy all of your life. Keep your teeth clean and watch what you chew. And your teeth will be as wonderful as the rest of you.
Once I did a show that was just dental hygiene films, and I bought some plaque candy. I found plaque candy online, and so plaque candy is basically, it's this red, they call it a plaque disclosing tablet, and basically what you do is you brush your teeth, then you chew the plaque disclosing tablet, and then you see, like, it sticks to where the plaque is, where you didn't brush, and that's supposed to teach you how to brush better, to see where you missed. So I did that once, and that was a pretty good show. Then I did that show again with more updated stuff, and only 2 people showed up. So sometimes it's really popular. I'd love to do a live show like that again. So, anyways, it's time to watch some to see what NASA is up to circa 1961. There's a lot of stuff going on. Enjoy.
Late in October 1961, the first Saturn vehicle was successfully launched at Cape Canaveral. 3 days later, the Office of Manned Spaceflight was formed. This film will show the steady progress that has occurred in manned spaceflight in the months that have followed. Within a few weeks, Chrysler prepared to produce Saturn S1 stages at Michoud, Louisiana. Actual production was to start as soon as the research and development phase was completed at the Marshall Space Flight Center. Midway through November '61, the RL-10 liquid hydrogen liquid oxygen engine successfully performed in a preliminary flight rating test. 9 days later, NASA selected North American Aviation to design and build 2 units, the command and service modules of the Apollo spacecraft that will be employed in the first exploration of the moon. At the close of that month, a spacecraft carrying a chimpanzee named Enos made 2 orbits around the Earth. Early in December, NASA put its final approval on Project Gemini, a 2-man spacecraft program specifically designed to provide experience in long-term weightlessness and rendezvous procedures. Then on December 15th, the Boeing industrial team was chosen to produce the giant first stage of the Saturn V at Michoud. Within days, engineers from Douglas Aircraft began work on modification of the Saturn S4 stage for use in the 3rd stage of Saturn V. At this time, the 2nd stage was already under contract, and the configuration of the Saturn V launch vehicle was firmly established. The 1st stage was 5 F1s, the 2nd stage was 5 J2s, and the 3rd stage was 1 J2. On December 21, the Office of Manned Spaceflight held the first meeting of a management council established to assure thorough coordination of all manned spaceflight activities. January of 1962 saw Aerojet General start development work on the M1. This liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen engine will be capable of developing 1,200,000 pounds of thrust. Early in February, NASA selected General Electric to supply equipment at Merritt Island, Florida, for integrated space vehicle checkout and to support NASA in its reliability assessment and integration analysis. On February 20th, astronaut John Glenn went into orbit to circle the Earth 3 times. 2 days later, Belcom Incorporated was signed to provide overall systems engineering support for the manned spaceflight program. To improve interagency communications, the Air Force established a liaison office with the Office of Manned Spaceflight through the appointment of a deputy commander, Major General Ritland. Before the end of the month, a mock-up of the Gemini capsule was completed at the McDonnell plant in St. Louis. Also in March, the NASA Manned Spacecraft Center moved from Langley Field, Virginia, to Houston, Texas. On the 25th of April, the 2nd Saturn was successfully launched. This included an experimental test explosion of water-filled tanks at high altitude at the end of the flight. Early in May, the separate contracts to produce the major components of the Apollo guidance system were awarded to 3 companies. AC Sparkplug, Raytheon, and Colesman Instrument will work with MIT in charge of systems development. About the same time, Convair was chosen to design and manufacture Little Joe 2, a launch vehicle for Apollo spacecraft suborbital test flights. May was also the month when astronaut Malcolm Scott Carpenter successfully made his 3-orbit flight around the Earth. Before the end of May, the F1 engine was fired at full thrust for the first time. It happened at Edwards, California. Moving into June, the Green Hut Construction Company contracted to modify the Saturn test stand at the Marshall Center. The modification provided 2 test positions. Shortly afterwards, a computer center to service the MISHU operation was established at Slidell, Louisiana. On July 11th, Space Administrator James E. Webb announced the decision to base the planning, research, development, and procurement of its space program on a lunar orbit rendezvous mode of flight to the moon. The vehicle was informally named the Bug. With this planning decision for lunar orbital rendezvous, NASA authorized an improved launch vehicle, the Saturn 1B, and instituted studies of a NOVA vehicle larger than previously contemplated. A few days later, it was announced that the new control center located at the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston, Texas, would be the primary Earth station for the control of manned space flight missions. Shortly after, IBM was awarded a contract to develop and supply the computer facility for the Mission Control Center. On July 21st, the design of the Saturn V launch complex was selected to include a vertical assembly building and an earth crawler to carry the 350-foot vehicle to the launch pad in an erect position. Off the California coast, the first full-scale model of Apollo spacecraft underwent a successful preliminary flotation test in August. September 17, 1962, the selection of 9 new astronaut candidates was announced in Houston. NASA approved plans for static and flight testing of the Apollo spacecraft propulsion and abort systems at the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. Late in September, plans were approved for the development of a test facility in Mississippi, which will be used for firing the large launch vehicle stages produced at the MISHU plant in New Orleans. On October 3rd, Walter Schirra successfully orbited the Earth 6 times. He made his landing in the Pacific Ocean. A few days later, the Saturn S4 stage successfully completed its first full-duration static firing test, a 7-minute run at Sacramento. At this time, teams from Hamilton Standard and International Latex were contracted for work on the development of spacesuits for Apollo spacemen. Within the week, the J-2 engine underwent a full-duration, 4-minute static firing test at Rocketdyne. Toward the end of the month, a NASA test pilot flew a paraglider over Edwards, California. It was a successful development test for the Gemini recovery system. At that same location, 3 separate contractors began work on a complex of 3 stands for testing the big F-1 rocket engine. By the 7th of November, Grumman was selected for development work on the lunar excursion module of the Apollo spacecraft. NASA announced its confirmation of lunar orbit rendezvous as the selected mission mode for Apollo. On November 9th, the S-1 first stage of the Saturn was test-fired at a full thrust of 1.5 million pounds. Previous firings have all been 1.3 million pounds, but this was in preparation for the first 2-stage flight to be launched in 1963. On November 14th, astronaut Gordon Cooper was selected for a 1-day orbital flight to take place this spring. Alan B. Shepard will be his backup. Within a few days, the 3rd test flight of Saturn succeeded. This included a 2nd high-water explosion. At the Marshall Space Flight Center, the Saturn IV stage arrived for dynamic tests. It had completed a 23-day voyage from the West Coast, coming by way of the Panama Canal, the Mississippi, Ohio, and Tennessee rivers. Late in the month, the first successful firing of a development engine for the Apollo spacecraft service module took place at the Aerojet General plant. In December, NASA contracted with the Army Corps of Engineers to study the problems involved in constructing a base on the moon. At the end of 1962, North American Aviation completed the fabrication of an Apollo command module. It was delivered to Northrop for installation of the parachute landing system and will be used in the first unmanned flight test. With this background of accomplishment in the manned space flight program, NASA looks forward to 1963 as another period of continuing progress.
So that's fascinating to me because it's very early in NASA's history, and the accomplishments that they have, like we've seen later progress reports, like 1967, and it tends to be a little bit more press relations related. So there's music, there's footage, they're talking about the wonders of blah blah blah. It's like almost like a newsreel of NASA. This one was like a list, like a timeline list. And besides the human accomplishments and the launch accomplishments, there was a whole lot of mentions about what corporations got contracts, which is just fascinating to me because I've always felt like these progress reports were more for Congress than they were for the people, the you and I. That these were shown to committees that were allocating funds for NASA. And this is like, oh, look, this corporation got it, this corporation got it. We located in this area, which is jobs for that area. And this is kind of bears out when I was working with NASA, and I learned that there were all these different space centers all over the United States, and each of them was run independent of each other. And in fact, in some cases, they were competing against each other. And somebody thought that was a great idea. Like, oh yeah, we'll have the best, whichever space center offers the best for blah. Yeah, we'll have them compete, and they'll get that funding. And it's like, what? Why would you do that? Like, we're all supposed to be part of the same deal. Like, why are you spending all these energies? And what I noticed is that we were doing an assessment of audiovisual materials, and that some facilities were very well funded, Johnson Space Center in Houston, near Houston, and some weren't. And surprisingly, Kennedy Space Center was not. They all had important stuff. There was also Slidell had stuff. Langley had stuff that was before NASA existed, when it was the aviation I think it was the NACA, and so it had all this early flight stuff that I was like, what is going on? And this is all supposed to go to National Archives, but it was all kind of sitting in closets and on shelves and all this stuff, and I was like, wow, this is fascinating, really, really interesting. So behind me, I've got on the telecine or the scanner, a film about verbs. So let's learn how to spell verbs. Enjoy.
Walking, flying, hopping, running. Those words describe action, don't they? Well, one problem with action words is that they're often spelled differently, depending on whether the action is happening now or has happened in the past. For example, what is this old stork doing? It's wading in the water. Wade is an action word. It describes the action of this old stork. How do you spell wade? W-A-D-E. Wade. But we said the stork is wading in the water. W-A-D-I-N-G. Wading. We could also say the stork wades in the water. And if we were talking about something that happened in the past, what would we say? We'd say the stork waded in the water. Yes, we change the spelling of an action word depending on how we use it. Action words, words that describe action, are called verbs. And you could think of a lot of them if you tried. For example, the word feed is a verb. And if we want to describe something that's happening now, we say, the blue jay feeds its baby. We've added the letter S to show that it's happening at the present time. This is called the present tense of the verb. Steps, runs, hops, kicks. To each of these verbs, we've added S to spell the present tense. With a few verbs, we show the present tense a little differently. Would you say the flamingo itches a scratch or scratches an itch? To those verbs that end with TCH, CH, SH, or S, we add ES to spell the present tense, as in scratches, reaches, washes, dresses. This strange bird is the anhinga, or snake-necked bird. There's a poem about this bird. For this bird to fly, it must dry its wings, but it has no way to squeeze. So before it flies, it dries its wings by spreading them out in the breeze. In verbs such as fly and dry, which end with Y, preceded by a consonant, we change the Y to I and add ES to spell the present tense. Flies, dries. Now let's see if you can use these ideas to spell the present tense of some other verbs. What's the present tense of write? Writes. Lift. Lifts. Wish. Wishes. Did you remember to add ES to a word that ends in SH? Try. Tries. Pitch. Pitches. When we add ES, we've really added an extra part or syllable to this word. Pitches. Thank. Thanks. Now suppose we wanted to talk about something that happened in the past, an experience we wanted to tell someone about. For example, if you saw a man driving this earth mover and you wanted to tell someone about it, what would you say? You'd probably use the word dump, wouldn't you? You might say, the earth mover dumped the earth in a pile. How do you spell dumped? D-U-M-P-E-D. Dumped. You could also say the earth mover lifted more earth and stopped. These are all past tense forms of verbs. Dump, dumped. Lift, lifted. Stop, stopped. But wait a minute. Do you see anything different about that last word? Stopped? Yes. When we want to change the word stop to the past tense, we double the final consonant and add ed. We do the same when we change a word such as pat to patted, or jog to jogged. We double the final consonant and add ed. How can we remember in which verbs we double the final consonant? Well, you'll recall that each vowel has a short sound and a long sound. If a verb has a short vowel sound, followed by a single consonant at the end of the word, we double the final consonant before adding ed. Rub, rubbed. Step, stepped. Plan, planned. If the verb has a short vowel sound followed by a single consonant at the end of the word, we double the final consonant before adding ed. All verbs follow the rules when forming the past tense. What's the past tense of the verb hit? We don't add ed to hit, do we? No. For the past tense, we'd say, he hit the ball. There is no change in the spelling of this verb. What's the past tense of run? Is it runned? No. We'd say, he ran to the base. So remember, there are several verbs in which the past tense is spelled differently and without adding ed. If you saw this baby in a backpack and you wanted to describe it, what would you say? You'd use the verb carry. You'd probably say, the father carried the baby in a backpack. To spell the past tense of verbs ending with y preceded by a consonant, we change y to I and add ed. It's similar to the process we used for the present tense. Remember that strange bird, the anhinga? Dry, dries, dried. But once again, not all verbs follow the rules. Fly, flies, flied. How about flied? Does that sound right? No. Fly is the verb, flies is present tense, and flew is past tense. The anhinga dried its wings before it flew. Now let's see if you can spell the past tense of these verbs. Bat, batted. Did you remember to double the final consonant before you added ed? Help, helped. This verb ends with two consonants, so you don't need to double the final one. Hop, hopped. Dream, dreamed. This verb ends with a single consonant, but the vowels combine to give the long sound, so we don't double the final consonant. Cry, cried. Laugh, laughed. There's one more form of a verb that we should think about. Did you ever try the rides at an amusement park? One of the rides you can take is in a boat that's sliding down a ramp. Let's go back and try that again. slide is the verb that describes this action. But how would you spell sliding? By just adding ing? No. In verbs with a final E, we drop the E before adding ing. Words like sliding, digging, walking, trying are formed from verbs. These words describe an action that's continuing. How about the verb dig? How would you spell digging? What do we do about a verb with a short vowel sound and single consonant at the end? We double the final consonant and add ing. Digging. A verb such as walk already has two final consonants, so we just add ing. Walking. But in a verb such as try with a final Y, we don't follow the process we used with other endings. We keep the Y and just add ing. Trying. You can learn a lot about spelling verbs from a stork, an earth mover, or a ride on a slide.
Exciting. So I'm guessing you don't want me to follow that up with spelling nouns, spelling adjectives, which I'm sure there are those in the series. So Journal Films was started by I can't pronounce his last name. It's Gilbert Alchol, ALCA. Anyways, who used to work for Coronet, and so Journal Films was based in Chicago, just like Coronet was. So there's a lot of Journal Films made in the 70s and 80s, and covering topics just like we saw. I know what you're thinking. It's a Badger's world, but we're just living in it.
Badgers. You don't hear so much about badgers. American badgers have a white stripe on their heads. They live in deep holes. A badger is pretty and furry, but a badger is not to be played with. She senses a mountain lion called a cougar. The badger's bite is powerful. The cougar is cautious. The cougar knows that the badger can break bones with her strong jaws. clean and neat, Mother Badger raises her young in her underground home at the end of a long tunnel. She fills the nest with grass to make a soft place for her babies. Her long claws won't hurt her cubs. They're good for digging in the earth. Badger cubs are born in the spring, hairless and blind. They soon grow hair and are marked by their stripe. By the time the cubs are 8 weeks old, they're ready to meet the other animals of their world. Mouse, woodchuck, rabbit, prairie dog. Their mother will teach them to hunt these animals. They will also learn that other animals can be dangerous to baby badgers. Coyote, rattlesnake, fox, cougar, the badger is famous as an animal that doesn't give up. There's a word for the way a badger keeps after an enemy. The word for this action is badgering. As the cubs play, they are also learning how to defend themselves. Though they can live even in deserts, most badgers are found in open country and sometimes in the woods. The cubs watch as their mother catches a mouse. A digging animal, the badger is built like a living bulldozer. Foxes are troublesome. They always try to steal a badger's food. So Mother Badger teaches her cubs to keep the fox out of their territory. As they grow bigger, the cubs wander away from their mother to explore the world. This raccoon is eating well. Maybe a badger can find food around here too. What can they do now? They're in a new and different territory. They are completely on their own. At least they have each other. But both still have much to learn about how to survive. What are these animals? Skunks have a way of defending themselves that the cubs can smell. In an anthill, the red ants bite. And prairie dogs are hard to catch. Where did the prairie dog go? Autumn colors fade. Soon winter will come. This rabbit knows that badgers are near. Badgers do not sleep through the winter, as some animals do. They must hunt for their food throughout the 4 seasons of the year. In the first year of their lives, the cubs have learned some skills. Next year, they will be more experienced in their hunting and digging way of life.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So it seemed like there was a lot of flute going on today in the films. I know we only have 6 minutes left, but I got a film set up. I want to watch it. It might be horribly boring, but it's one I haven't seen, so that's what we do, is we watch films we haven't seen and hope for them to be fascinating, but some of them aren't. So I'll just say this now because I know some of you have to go back to work. Thanks for watching. You can buy us coffee at ko-fi.com/avgeeks. Also go to Patreon at patreon.com/avgeeks if you want to subscribe and give us a monthly donation. If you like what you saw, or if you didn't like what you saw and you want to watch something else that we showed that was good, you can go to avgeeks.com. There's a 24/7 channel there that's streaming with past shows and past things that we've digitized. It's over 2,000 things up there. You can also hit the like button. That's easy, cheap, and it helps game the system. You can also subscribe and share. Tell other people what we're doing. Okay, so this next film is... I don't know where this is going to go. It's Say What You Mean is the title. And I just looked at the beginning of it, and it's McGraw-Hill. But beyond that, I have no idea what it's going to be like. So here's Say What You Mean. Enjoy.
Should say what you mean.
I do. At least, I mean what I say. That's the same thing, you know.
Not the same thing a bit. Why, you might as well say that I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see.
This building will have social rooms inviting us to parties and dancing, lunch rooms and snack bars urging us to eat together, and hi-fi and TV for us to use. The new student...
It sounds easy. Just say what you mean. Yet I first began to realize how much this phrase implies while we were studying language in Professor Morgan's speech class. We started off with the question, what is the function of language in the process of communication by speech?
These lines represent the impressions which a speaker receives from the world around him. Books he reads, people he talks to, things he sees and hears and experiences. He's been accumulating these impressions since he was born. They go through his brain and become associated with each other. Then out of these impressions, the speaker's brain forms an idea or concept. And then the speaker chooses symbols, words and phrases to represent his idea. And he uses these symbols to convey his idea along the sound waves to his listener. The symbols used in this process are language. Now, each listener receives these language symbols as sensory impressions. They must go through his senses, become associated in his mind with other thoughts and feelings, and then be recreated by his brain into a concept. There can be communication only when concept A becomes concept A1. These two can never be exactly alike, but the closer they are, the better the communication. To achieve effective communication, the speaker must first of all have an idea or concept which is definite and clear in his own mind, and his language must represent accurately this concept.
We soon found out that words which stand for concrete things and real experiences help a speaker define his own ideas. One day while Roy Davis was talking, he said,
"Going to college is a swell life. Gee, most people don't know how nice it really is." And
when we discussed this, it turned out that Roy had only a vague idea of what he meant when he said,
"Going to college is a swell life."
Roy's concept A wasn't clear. And so each of us thought of different things. Not A1, but B. D. And even things which don't mean that college life is swell at all. He just didn't get his ideas across to us. Then he tried again.
What I like about college life is that you find so many new friends there. They're taking the same required courses, and they're members of the football cheering section, and they're all invited to the same freshman parties.
This time there was communication, because the idea was clearly defined in the mind of the speaker, and his language clearly represented it. After that, we practiced choosing specific words that help define an idea.
You just said a group of creatures. Now, what expressions can you think of to give a clearer, a better defined image than group of creatures? Yes.
School of whales.
A litter of kittens.
A brood of chicks. A flock of geese.
A covey of partridges.
A bevy of quail.
A swarm of bees.
A colony of ants.
A flight of swallows.
A herd of elephants.
We discovered also how a speaker can make his own concept more definite and clear by going down the scale in his choice of expressions, from the more abstract to the more specific, like this. Something to read. Book. Fiction. Mark Twain stories. Huckleberry Finn. Then we learned that the speaker must organize the details he presents into larger ideas or concepts and choose language which describes the whole.
This was kind of a pretty place with its woods and some water.
Just a moment, Miss Baxter. You know, I think you can improve this if you think of your visual impressions specifically. Tell us some of the things you saw exactly as you saw them, in terms of color and form and so on. And then see if you can add them all up to a picture for us.
Well, let's see. Everything was blue and green. The lake was a dark blue because of its depth. The pine woods around it were an even darker gray-green. Low hills circled both the lake and the woods. They were so dark they seemed to set off the dark blue water from the bright blue sky.
Yes, that's much better, Miss Baxter. Thank you. That's all for now. You can see now, can't you, that when you think of your impressions as far as the concept of color and form are concerned, that you were able to give us some specific details about this picture which you yourself saw. Of course, when we think of impressions and create concepts, we sometimes generalize. That is, we make abstractions. Now, abstractions are useful, and often they're necessary in order for us to get to the larger concepts of thinking. And yet we need to be careful in using abstractions. Do you know why? Yes, Rogers.
Well, it seems to me that abstractions like truth, liberty, or justice can mean different things to different people. You need to say what truth you are talking about, and what kind of justice, or liberty for whom.
Yes, that's good. Yes?
If you make generalizations carelessly, you can get into the bad habit of using labels that you can't prove. The best people, Wall Street bankers, warmongers, prejudiced Southerners, or they're all pinkos, are expressions people use that way. They usually overgeneralize to the point of untruth.
Yes, that's quite right. During the last war, everybody used the word freedom, but nobody was exactly sure of what it meant. But President Roosevelt made it more specific. He said, freedom of worship, freedom of expression, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. And so today we're going to consider another aspect in the communicative process, the choice of language symbols as they relate to the audience. You must consider your audience and ask yourself, are the language symbols which I choose clear to my listeners? Are they within my listeners' experience? So
well, that seems simple to me. You just don't use big words like parliamentarian or fluoroscope when you're talking to children. But then Bernie Stevens got up to speak one day, and this happened.
There's this joint in New York where you can dig the craziest sounds. Man, these cats really wail. And the people that go there dig what's happening. You know, not a cube in the lot.
I think you'd better translate, Stevens. See, I think you're going to have to assume that in any audience there's going to be a certain number of cubes like us to whom your language just isn't clear. Now, what's this joint?
It's sort of a music place, a nightclub.
Oh.
It's a club where they play crazy sounds, real long-haired jazz.
All right. We'll grant that jazz is legitimate music. We just want to understand you, that's all. But there's another angle to be considered. Am I right in thinking that cube is jive for musically unsophisticated?
Yeah, square.
Ah, but you see, this word may offend some of us because it implies that we're ignorant. And such an implication makes communication rather difficult.
Oh, I didn't mean it that way.
I know you didn't. As a matter of fact, you've been swell about the whole thing. Thanks a lot, Stevens. You see, I persuaded Mr. Stevens to give this demonstration of jive talk to show why a speaker needs to say exactly what he means, using words according to dictionary definitions that are understood by everybody, and using grammatical constructions that people expect to hear. Now, you don't have to be a grammatical purist, but you do need to be understood. And in speaking, you need to be understood in the flash of a second.
Yes?
Mark Twain once said, the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and the lightning bug.
Now, up to this point, we've been talking about language as symbols to communicate your ideas clearly. But besides making your language comprehensible, you have to think about the tastes of your audience and make your language fit the mood of the occasion. But today, we're going to hear some recordings, some words which were spoken on different occasions, but with the same purpose, to raise people's confidence. The first of these is a reading to religious worshipers. Listen.
If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me.
The next one is from a crowd to a team. Now, this one is from Great Britain's war leader to the British people in a time of crisis.
For 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour.
And the last one is to a peacetime audience, witnessing the first nationally televised presidential inauguration.
We stand ready to engage with any and all others in joint effort to remove the causes of mutual fear and distrust among nations, so as to make possible drastic reduction of armaments.
Finally, we began to think about how to make language symbols interesting and forceful. We picked up some important don'ts.
And another aspect of language that we're going to take up today is the cliché, the use of the same trite words over and over again so that we know exactly what's going to come out even before we hear them. And we'll try a little experiment with you. See if you can finish these sentences before I do. Shall we give aid and
comfort
to our enemy as if they were our own flesh and
blood?
To do so will win us a victory that tastes like gall and wormwood. That's right. Better we should mortgage our
Goods and chattels.
Go at this thing hammer and
tongs.
Fight to the finish. Do
or die.
And victory will
be ours.
That's right.
Our next don't was, don't try to sound like a book. You just sound foolish. Lillian Jackson demonstrated the notion many students have, that good speaking consists of the use of big words, and she asked us to simplify what she said.
In my opinion, it is a not unjustifiable assumption that
I think
individuals who are members of the preschool age group
children under 6
are not capable of occupying their time without supervision, can't play by themselves. It is not undesirable to attempt the establishment of a recreational center.
It would be good to set up a playground.
Yes, thank you, Lillian. You can see how ridiculous it is to try to make your speech impressive this way. Expressions such as not undesirable just obscure the meaning of what you're trying to say. And you lose audience interest, too. Yes.
The writer George Orwell says you can cure yourself of the not un-habit by saying to yourself, a not un-black dog was chasing a not un-small rabbit across a not un-green field.
And then we came to the do's, which were harder. We began to study famous writers and speakers to see how we could make our language more interesting. And we found some clues.
Very simple language can be forceful because it directs your attention to the facts and lets them speak for themselves. I think Ernest Hemingway is a master at this kind of writing. I'd like to read a sentence from the ending of A Farewell to Arms. I went into the room and stayed with Catherine until she died. She was unconscious all the time, and it did not take her very long to die.
I think word pictures are interesting because they give sensory detail. To illustrate this, I brought along an excerpt from a speech by Robert Ingersoll. Like an armed warrior, like a plumed knight, James G. Blaine marched down the halls of the American Congress and threw his shining lance full and fair against the brazen foreheads, the defamers of his country and the maligners of his honor.
Visual images are good because they relate something unknown to something known. James P. Warburg, a prominent banker, once said, "To ask whether a real full employment bill is a threat to private industry is like asking whether hay is a threat to a donkey. At that, a donkey does not need hay as badly as private industry needs full employment."
Word pictures stick in the minds of listeners. Here's an example from a speech by the prominent industrialist H.W. Prentice, Jr. He said, "No people ever went down the road to dictatorship when the price of admission was clearly shown at the entrance gate."
Some great speakers have demonstrated how to make language more forceful in its rhythm. They often use balanced construction to do this. Listen to Daniel Webster. Liberty and union, now and forever, one and inseparable. And Abraham Lincoln. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. Some speakers use questions to make their language more forceful. In his first inaugural address, Woodrow Wilson said, "Men's hearts wait upon us. Men's lives hang in the balance. Men's hopes call upon us to say what we will do. Who shall live up to the great trust? Who dares fail to try?"
We tried to achieve rhythm and imagery in our own speeches, too. But of course, we all needed practice. A few days later, one of the girls in the class said,
"Choosing language is like choosing a dress. Before we speak, we should ask ourselves, does the word fit the thought that wears it? Will it suit the occasion? And will the audience notice?"
You learn how to choose language that is clear, appropriate, and forceful only by doing it, by actually speaking in front of an audience. One day, as I was about to talk to a group of students, faculty members, and their families about our hopes for a new student union, I remembered Professor Morgan's advice. Think about your audience. Be your own listener. Then suddenly, it seemed the strangest thing was happening. There I was on the platform, and there I was in the audience. It was like a dream. I was my own listener. And I soon discovered that my language wasn't getting across.
The new student union will be an awfully nice place.
Oh, no, not a nice place. A building of modern design, especially planned for student activities.
There'll be room for all kinds of things, you know.
But we don't know. Tell us what things. Be specific.
So I tried to think how I could be more specific. Then I noticed something else. When my expressions had been vague, the audience had seemed to be very far away. So I tried hard to make my words interesting and clear.
This building will have social rooms inviting us to parties and dancing, lunch rooms and snack bars urging us to eat together, and hi-fi and TV for us to use. The new student union will house all of our activities in an atmosphere of freedom and fun.
When I said that, my listeners seemed to be closer. Language had lessened the distance between us. Then I understood.
And that's what communication is. Getting ideas across the distance between you and your audience. Your language will do that if you know what you think, if you can be your own listener, and if you always say exactly what you mean.
All right, there you go. That scene where the woman is heckling herself. Yeah, that's, I don't know. I think that's problematic. If I start thinking about myself being in the audience and being aware of what I'm saying, then it means that I am not going to say anything that's worthwhile. Public speaking's hard. It's hard work. Sometimes I got it. Sometimes I don't. It's hard for me to talk to you guys because I'm not getting the feedback. I'm getting this kind of feedback via comments, but it's very delayed. So, anyways, I appreciate you being there for us. Again, you can get us coffee, ko-fi.com/avgeeks. You can donate at Patreon, patreon.com/avgeeks. And you can watch the 24/7 channel at avgeeks.com. Hit the thumbs up, the likes button, and we will see you again tomorrow. Everybody take care. Bye.